Hello, all you wonderful VITA volunteers. Welcome to this video, which is going to help you learn how to use the IRS tool called Link and Learn to train and learn tax law and ethics and all of the other tools that you're going to need to be able to volunteer at a VITA center, because at the end of that training, you're going to take some certification exams that all volunteers have to take to be able to work at the center. My name is Jim Simpson. I run an organization called Masters of Coin that runs a few VITA sites. This video is created on behalf of the Maricopa County VITA Network. That network consists of several nonprofits such as Masters of Coin and the City of Phoenix and Tempe Community Center, Mesa United Way, A New Leaf, Rehoboth, Trin United. All of these nonprofits bind together to run these VITA sites and help low-income taxpayers prepare their tax returns free of charge. The objectives of this training is to help you get certified. The type of training that Link and Learn uses is not quite like the traditional training. You know, usually you would have attended a classroom. I teach these classes, and there'll be up to like 24 hours of training. You know, you'll listen to me lecture, you'll look at PowerPoints, you'll take notes, and at the end of the training, you'll go try to memorize everything and take an exam. Link and Learn uses a little different style. It gives you problems and situations, and then it shows you the resources that you can use to be able to solve those problems. It gives you direct links to it, and then gives you a situation you've got to solve the problem, and it tells you whether you're right or wrong. That's pretty good training, because that's exactly kind of what real life is like. When you volunteer at a VITA center, you're going to sit with a client, you're going to do a tax return, you're going to get stuck, you're going to have a problem to solve, you're going to rely on other resources. You're going to rely on your colleagues. You're going to rely on these resources that we're going to introduce you to, like the Volunteer Resource Guide, publication 4012. And you're going to use those tools to be able to solve the puzzle. This video is for both returning and new volunteers. We'll start right from soup to nuts, how to create all the accounts that you're going to need to be able to get through all the training. Some of the returning volunteers will want to use Link and Learn to self-study. They may want to fast forward through, you know, some of the parts of this video, because they've already created all of their accounts. But most importantly, this is going to introduce you to the resources that you need. So with that being said, let's get started. We'll take a look at some of those resources, okay? The first resource that I would tell you is the Volunteer Resource Guide. And this is the publication 4012. We call it the 4012. This is something that you will use a lot. Your site coordinator should have given you a hard copy of it. This is something you're going to have at your side while you're doing tax returns, while you're studying for this. I tend to put it in a binder like this. It's not really showing up here because I have this background on, but I put it, oh, there we go. I put it in a binder like this so that I can have it in my hands. By the end of tax season, it's in tatters. I use it constantly, okay? You can see here on the online version of it, here it's broken into chapters that you can do. And as we go through this Link and Learn training, you're going to find little links that will open up sections of this. But I would encourage you to get the hard copy, learn how to go find those sections quickly as you can. Another resource that we'll use that's coming up in here is the publication 4491, the VITA Training Guide. And this is, I like to refer to this as the textbook. The 4012 is kind of like the reference guide. It gives you the quick and dirty of things. It gives you tables and charts and things like that, but it doesn't really explain much. If you're trying to learn or you're just curious, this publication 4491 is the place to go. It's a very large publication. You can kind of see up here, it's 396 pages, but you can break it down into sections. For instance, today, when we go through, we're going to go through one of the lessons called filing status. Over here on the left, I can click on this little plus right there and expand what this is. And this is a section that we're going to be looking at today. What else have we got here as resources here? We're going to introduce you to, this is a guide called the 4961, which is the Volunteer Standards of Conduct, or for short, ethics training. This is one of the 2 tests that all volunteers have to take, okay? And this right here will teach you what the quality standards are to be used at a VITA site, and what general ethics are, what you can and cannot do to follow IRS standards for that. And then last, we're going to have the Volunteer Assisters Test and Retest Guide. So this is going to help you as we get towards the end. We'll talk more about what the exams are going to be like and that. But here, I'll give you a quick little hint. They're giving you all the questions already before you have. So nothing to really worry about. So let's get started here. And I want to go to the Link and Learn site. I can get there a lot of ways. I could just type in Link and Learn certification.com, and it kind of comes up, Link and Learn Taxes 2020. But we want to go to a specific place. We want to get to Link and Learn Home. And so what I'm going to suggest you do here, this is where we want to be. I'm going to copy this link right here. This is where we want to be. I'm going to copy this link right here. Let's explore this site a little bit. Over here on the left, you're going to see where you would log in to do certification tests, and we're going to do that later on. Okay, but not right now. Over here under More Help, there's a Getting Started tutorial, which is going to teach you how to set up these accounts. And although we're going to go through it, you may want to come back here and refer to this once in a while. There's links to get to other IRS publications and forums. You will need Adobe Reader. If you don't have it, you can get it here. Now, over here on Quick Links, here's what we're really going to explore today, Link and Learn Taxes. But before I go there, let's look at some of what these other links are. The Certification Test and Retest PDFs, that's that 6744 I told you about. You can go download it from here. This VITA TC training guides, that's the big textbook one I was telling you about, the 4491. You can go download it from there. You can give evaluations of your training. Oh, look here. Here's the practice lab. Now the practice lab, this is an important part. Practice lab is giving you the software that we're going to use. It's the TaxSlayer software. It's exactly the same software that we'll use at the sites. You're going to need to use this because when we get into taking the certification exams, you've got to prepare tax returns to be able to answer some of the questions. And as you go through this training, it's going to lead you to the practice lab and look at tutorials and walk you through how to prepare some of the returns. This is very important here. If I were to click on this, I'll just go ahead and click on it for a second. Oh, hey, it's asking me for a password. Where do you get the password? Well, right down here, right here in this section, please use the generic password Train Pro Web to gain access to the lab. That's in all caps, Train Pro Web. So if you forget, come back to your Lincoln Learn site and you'll be able to get into the practice lab. I mentioned earlier, all volunteers, whether you're preparing tax returns or not, have to take two very simple tests. One is called the Volunteer Standards of Conduct Training, or the Ethics Training. That was that one booklet I showed you. You can download it right here if you click on it. The other is this one down here at the bottom called the Intake and Interview Quality Review Training. I didn't download that, so let me just quickly click on this. I can say open it with Adobe Acrobat, and this is sort of like a PowerPoint presentation. There's like 50 slides that you can go through. It can tell you what the objectives of this training are, and I'll just basically tell you what we want to do is learn how to do this Form 13614 Intake, Interview, and Quality Review Sheet. This is a really important document. This is what helps us learn the taxpayer's story, learn what types of, how we're going to prepare the returns, what levels of certification that you need. And it prompts us to ask the taxpayer questions. It's a very important document, okay? I'll let you go through these things, but basically right here, this is going to show you the sections of that form and what we use it for. So, and towards the end, we'll show you how you can go take the certification exam for that. That one's a very simple one. It's you got 10 questions, you get 2 attempts to take it, and you only have to get 80%. And you can keep the book open while you look at it. So it's pretty easy. So these are the quick links. Let's jump right in and start doing the lesson. Okay, so I'm going to click on Lincoln Learn Tax Lessons. Okay, and we're going to use, first of all, I would tell you if you're reading through this and you look at these things, here it says here you can click here to see the content of each course. This is one way to get to it. It's not the way I'm going to recommend. If I show you what this is just showing you menus of the basic menu, the advanced menu. These have to do with 2 types of certification tests, which I'll discuss in a moment. It also has the specialty exams, but it's not in any real organized manner. Instead, I'm going to suggest you use this link right here, or this tab right here called Certification Path. And you'll see here we have a basic certification path. I'm going to start going over the advanced, and I would highly recommend, even if you're new to taxes, new to this, study for the advanced. It's, first of all, I will tell you, even if you don't feel comfortable doing the more complicated returns, your site coordinator is not going to ask you to do anything that you're not comfortable with. But by certifying at the advanced level, you'll at least gain some awareness of some of the complexities of things and know where you really need to go ask questions and know where something's really out of your depth. Okay, it's really not that much harder to pass the advanced course than it is the basic course. So we're going to assume you want to go through advanced. There's also some specialized certifications for military and international. Military is, well, helping, there's some special rules. If you're in the military, certain types of pay is not taxable, but it's specialized. And we have sites like out at Luke Air Force Base, and those volunteers will want to get military certified. International certified is if you're dealing especially with international students. As I told you, I run a site at Scottsdale Community College, and so there's a couple of us who get certified in international to help the international students. We used to have one, the health savings account over here, but this year the health savings account has been incorporated into the advanced because we see so many of these people taking advantage of health savings accounts now. We've just, IRS has included that training into the advanced certification. So down here, we're going to say, well, which path would you like to take? And we're going to click on advanced. And then we're going to say we're a student, not a teacher. And then when I click on this link, and before I click on this link, I just noticed down here, here's another link to get you to that Pub 4491, which is the textbook. I won't click on it because it takes a while to download, but that's something you're going to want to have handy. IRS doesn't print those out anymore, so you pretty much need to have those in a electronic format. So back up here, if I click on Start Advanced Course, the difference here is now I get a streamlined menu of just the things that I need to, the lessons that I need for the advanced course. I would highly recommend you go through important changes this year. This course introduction is going to show you navigation tips and stuff, how you go through the thing. Here's where the lessons start, filing basics. I'm going to go through one called filing status. It's a little bit more involved, and we're going to go through some of these to show you the tools that are there and how to navigate through this. So I'm going to go ahead and click on filing status here. So first of all, when we come to this, we're going to see here, we've got a training toolkit. It's got some links here for skills workout, certification warm-up, media, and all this. Some of this I found a little confusing because, see this skills workout? This is actually the lesson, okay? And you'll see over here where it says skills workout. Well, again, this is just a lesson. These links over here on this side is just taking you to sections of that lesson. Okay, but it's all basically in here. Same thing, the certification warm-up, and that happens to be the same thing as skills workout here. This is going to give you some sample questions before you take certification exams. Here's some media. Each one of these lessons will have some media, like there's a YouTube video on filing status. Some of you are very visual learners, and you may want to watch that video for doing it. At the end of this lesson, we're going to go show you there's a TaxSlayer tutorial about how to start a tax return in the practice lab. Remember, TaxSlayer is practice lab. TaxSlayer is software we're using. Practice lab is well, the practice lab. You know, you're not doing real returns. You can mess things up, play around, and experiment all you want in it. Okay. Job aids. These are links to the resources that you're going to need to solve some of the problems in this lesson. There's an interactive tax assistant, which you should get familiar with because you'll probably use that when you're preparing returns. It helps you resolve some of the questions that you can just kind of pick little drop-down things, and it'll tell you what filing status or whether somebody qualifies as a dependent or whether they're eligible for a credit or not. You won't really need that for these lessons, but here again, there's a link to the publication 4491, the textbook. This is that form intake and interview quality review sheet, which I showed you where you can get this. Here are the resources we're going to use in this lesson that are in publication 4012. That's the volunteer resource guide, the reference manual that I say you're going to use more than anything right here. And then there's some optional ones. So before you start these, there's also something called a skill check that, you know, you can just, let's say that you're about to take this lesson and you opened up the 4491 and you browsed through it, you read through it, you did this and you want to see, you know, check yourself. So you can go check, and I'm just going to randomly select some of these things here. You know, it gives you questions, and then you could answer this, and then, hey, check my answers. And well, hey, I got 1 out of 5. That's statistically what I should have gotten when I randomly selected it. But you can go to, now this is just to get you started. So now we say you're ready to take the lesson. So I'm going to click on skills workout here. And so this brings up the presentation. You'll notice here, let's talk about how you navigate some of the things in here. You'll see down here on the bottom right, it starts on page 1 and it goes all the way to page 36. I could, if I stop this and want to come back and I know I left off at page 10, I could type in page 10 and go straight to page 10. Or I can come back here, to page 1, okay? Up in here, you could print sections if you wanted to. You could get help. The glossary is helpful. we use a lot of terms in here sometimes, but the glossary would open up in here. And if you wanted, let's see, I'm trying to think of what would be a term in here that we're going to use in this lesson here. And I'm not seeing one that comes off the hand, but you know, let's say that you were doing tax credits and you wanted to know more about the child tax credit. Well, this would tell you what it's about. Okay. There's also references in here that would give you kind of where those were the same job aids that I just showed you for that. Here you can navigate to the next one by either up here or down here. And this one is just telling you your main resource is going to be the publication 4491. So let's go to the next one. So the next one is going to say to determine the most advantageous and allowable filing status, you've got to know a lot of information. And all of this information comes from the intake and interview quality review sheet. It's the questions that the taxpayer has answered, but it's really a cue to you to ask more questions depending on the answers that they put down here, okay? And so here now on this third slide, it's going to tell us, here are the job aids that we're going to need to be able to determine the filing status. So right here, you've got links that I'm going to click on this one. And by the way, I would tell you, get very familiar with this. If you happen to have your 4012 by your side, it's in tab B, filing status, and this is on page B8. I'll make this a little bit bigger. And a lot of these resources in the Pub 4012, excuse me a second. They use charts and decision trees and things like this. This is a very important one here. And so you need to be comfortable with using these kinds of trees. Start here. Were you married on the last day of the year? Yes or no? Well, if it's yes, then it asks you another question. Well, did you and your spouse live apart all of the last 6 months of the year? No? Well then, okay, stop. It tells you right away what your filing status is. If it's yes, and I'm focusing on this because this is the harder one of this. Most of these are fairly clear cut, but in this lesson, you're going to be able to need to become familiar with this. But this asks you a lot of questions, and be sure to read these carefully. Do all of the following apply? Not just one of them. And if you can answer yes to all of these, well, hey, you can get a head of household status. I would also be sure in all of these things, whenever you're reading these, I know it's really easy. There's a whole lot of fine print down here in the footnotes, but there are times where you're going to want to really pay attention to those footnotes. For instance, I'll tell you, you get, is it in this one here? No, it's not on this one. But sometimes when you're on the dependents worksheet, you know, did your son or daughter live with you for 6 months of the year? But they were away at Flagstaff at NAU. Well, if you look at these fine print notes, they say temporary absences away from the house doesn't disqualify them. It's as if they lived in the house. So if they're room and boarding it up at NAU, they're still considered living in your house. So the point I wanted to make is don't ignore these footnotes. Read these carefully. So I'm going to shrink this because I think we'll come back to this in a bit. Here's another one. It'll open up. This is another chart that's in the 4012 about who is a qualifying person that qualifies you to file as head of household. The tax law and every part of it has different definitions and different rules for different things. It's not necessarily just a dependent that would qualify you. You need to be able to go look at this chart and determine. And in this lesson, you're going to need to refer to this. So I'll shrink this a little bit too. So let's go on to the next one. So now we have something called skills warm-up. It's just to help you, you know, it assumes you've at least reviewed some of the materials and you know things, so it's going to ask you some questions. But hey, notice it's got little links here too. So it says, for purpose of determining filing status, which of the following taxpayers would be considered unmarried for the tax year? Okay, and if you've gone and read through your things, you will see that you want to look at the last day of the year. Were you married or were you not, right? And that's what this decision tree, I'll open this up again. Actually, I think I have to do it this way, right here. There's the first question, were you married on the last day of the year? So let's look at our facts here. Chris, and what are we trying to determine? We're trying to determine filing status, which of the following taxpayers would be considered unmarried for the tax year, okay? Chris, who did not get married until December, but on the last day of the year, he was married. If I happen to click on this one, it's going to tell me, oh no, that was incorrect, try again. It's going to say, Tori, whose spouse died in February of the tax year. Now, if you go through the decision tree, you're going to find that that will have a special status in there. The third one says Hal, who was married until his divorce in November of the tax year. So he got divorced in November, right? Was he married at the end of the tax year? And if I click on that one, it's going to tell me correct, and it's going to tell me why. Okay, so here there's two of these questions. I'll let you go through the other questions here. Okay, but again, you've got links here to give you the information of which you're going to find it out. That's the key for these Link and Learn lessons. It's not giving you the answers, it's forcing you, it's giving you the resources and forcing you to go look them up, which is what we have to do in the real world. So it's a very good training for doing this. We'll go on to the next one. Here's skills warm up for married filing jointly. Same thing here. You're going to want to go to your resources to answer these questions. Okay. Then we get into the case studies, and there's several case studies. Okay. So it says, this one says Jerome is married but has lived apart from his spouse for 2 years. Jerome pays all the cost of keeping up his home for himself and his dependent 8-year-old daughter, okay, who lives with him. So they've been living apart for 2 years. He's got, it's his dependent 8-year-old daughter who does live with him. So if I go into that decision tree, right, were they married on the last day of the year? Yeah, they're married, said it. Yeah. Did you and your spouse live apart all of the last 6 months? Yes, they did, right? Do all of the following apply? Are they filing a separate return? They've lived apart for 2 years. They're probably not talking much anymore, so they will. Did you pay half of that cost of keeping up your home? Is your home the main home of your child, stepchild, or foster child for more than half of the year? And it warns you, a grandchild does not meet this test. But yeah, if I go back in here and it says his dependent daughter has lived with him all year. And you can claim the child as a dependent. Yes. So there he's head of household. Okay. So the question was, does Jerome's marital status prevent him from using the head of household filing status? And you have to answer to yourself, I would say no. And let's click for the explanation. And it'll tell you the explanation of it. So there's going to be several of these case studies. Oh, here's some more skills warm up for head of household. Head of household is one of is probably the most difficult filing status to really be sure you're getting it right. So I would focus on that. Here's a case study too for head of household. I won't go through all of these, but you have to figure out where are your resources, where can I learn about this? And then what it's asking here is Joan a qualifying person for head of household status? Okay, try to come up with the answer on your own, and then you can click here for the explanation. So let's see what else we've got. Here's another case study on head of household. Okay, here's skills warm up for determining file status. Now, you notice, see, you've got some links here. Here's the decision tree. Oh, here's one more thing. They're trying to make this realistic, okay? When you get down and you're in front of a taxpayer, you're interviewing the taxpayer. You're looking at the intake and interview form, and they've marked a few things, but hey, I see you've marked Joanne as your dependent. Did she live with you all year last year, right? You know, you may need to ask some qualifying questions, you know, for that. Can she be claimed as a dependent on, you know, somebody else's return? You know, things like that. But you're actually talking. So you can say here, you can say, click here to listen to the conversation. However, I will tell you, if you don't want to listen to the audio file or your computer's slow, this is really what's saying. Becky says, I guess I should file as single since I live alone. Well, how would you respond? And you want to decide whether A or B is the correct one. So here are some of these skills warm up, and good. Those are all fairly similar. Here's a case study on qualifying widower. So here you'll probably have to go into, if I were you, I would open up the 4491. I would go look at filing statuses. What are the 5 filing statuses? Okay. What are the requirements for each one? So I would click right here. What's a qualifying widower? And so I would review this, right? And then I would go back into this here. And so what's it's going to say, spouse passed away in August of 2020, so the current year, okay? So, and then he provides all the support for 2 dependent children, ages 7 and 9. If Fred does not remarry, which filing status would he use for the following tax years? And so I would tell you, okay, I can think of one there. There's a separate one there. There's 3 different filing statuses that he's going to use in here. Okay, so go forward and look at those things. Here's a skills warm up for qualifying widower. Then we're nearing the end of this lesson. And so you get to this screen, it says out of scope situations for VITA. Well, what does that mean? Well, we talk about doing returns that are in scope, meaning they fit the training that we've done and we're qualified to be able to do the returns. But there are lots of situations that are very complicated and they're what we call out of scope. And you may say to yourself, well, how do I know which one it is? Well, here's where that 4012 comes in handy. And I can't seem to get it there to show you in the thing. But if you look up right in the very first part of it, it's going to tell you what situations are out of scope. It'll show you by which form you're working on and which situations are in scope and out of scope. For the purposes of this lesson, right, it says here a spouse who may be relieved of joint liability as an innocent spouse. I just thought of something. What's an innocent spouse? What does that mean? You know, I'm not sure, but I'm going to go look in the glossary. And I'm going to go click on I here. And, oh, hey, innocent spouse relief, right? Or injured spouse relief. Sometimes you hear it doing this. And this is saying a provision of the tax law that allows a taxpayer to get back his or her share of a joint overpayment when the overpayment was used to pay one spouse's past due federal tax. This is more common than you would know. You know, a previous spouse has got child support, you know, from another marriage, and they grab your refund to pay for his child support, right? I'm going to simplify it now. You know, I went a little farther than I needed to. These are out of scope. They get very complicated. But if you find somebody that is like this. You want to talk with your site coordinator because we've got resources we can refer these folks to, like low-income taxpayer clinics that they can get legal resources to help them with. Here's another one, community property tax laws for married filing separate taxpayers. First of all, anything to do with married filing separate, we do not do. It's out of scope. One of the reasons we don't do it is Arizona is a community property tax law. And basically what that says is while you're married, half of everything you make is your spouse's, half of everything your spouse makes is yours, half of your withholding is hers or his, and vice versa. So if they're living apart and they're not talking to each other, it's very hard to do an accurate return, okay? I will also tell you, just as this, it's rare that filing a married filing separate return will ever give you a better tax benefit than married filing jointly. A lot of people think that they will. I can only think of one little situation now that would do that. Last one, it says here, taxpayers are not certain if they are in a common law marriage. Well, in Arizona, there is no common law, but they may say, well, in Texas, I lived with them for 7 years and we're married under that. This is out of scope. If they're claiming that, we're going to say you're going to have to go to a professional tax preparer to have that done. And by the way, one other thing I will do that I try to tell volunteers right off the thing, don't get into an argument with that's what your site coordinator's there for. If the client is not, understanding what you're telling them or doesn't agree with that, just say, hang on a second, let me get you some help and go get your site coordinator, okay? They get paid the big bucks to do that. Okay, a couple more things and then we're done. So now we get to here are certification warm-up test questions. So here, these questions are going to help prepare you for the actual certification test. But let's take a moment to talk about that. And remember earlier, I told you here that, hey, here's this booklet. And right away, this booklet is giving you all the questions. Now, here's what it's like. And let's take an easy one. We'll say here the volunteer standards of conduct test, right? If I click on this, here it's going to give you all the test questions, okay? There's only 10 of them here. But then you'll see here that there's the volunteer standards of conduct retest questions. So every test has a test and a retest, okay? And so when you go in to actually take the certification test, they may pull questions from the test or from the retest. So if you go take your booklet, your 6744 booklet, right? And you go through and you answer both the test and the retest. And by the way, the retest ones are just the same. They're basically the same as the test questions. They just reframe it or put it in a negative thing. So it's not double the work really, but go answer those. And then when you go to take the test on Link and Learn, okay, you'll have it all right there in front of you, okay? So I think I've said it, but let me say it again. You get 2 opportunities to take the test. You can stop and start the test if you need to go research something. They're open book. You can have these books open in front of you, okay, while you're taking it. And you only have to get 80% to pass it, okay? So these questions right here they're a little bit harder than the other ones. They're gonna help you prepare for this. So in this case, there's 6 of these questions. And as soon as we finish with this lesson, I'm going to show you how to get set up in Link and Learn to be able to take those tests, okay? So nearing the end, here's a little bit more drill and practice. And again, these things, you can answer these. I'll just randomly select some answers here and say, check my answers. And it actually gives you, explanations, some of it. So now we're at the last slide. And this is saying here, a lot of these lessons will have tax layer tutorials or problems that you can have. So we're going to, I think first, since we're right here, let's go look at the practice lab. Okay, so here's a tax layer training video. I can click on this. It opens right up in the lesson here. Whoops. It's going to ask you to fill out your name and submit. And then this is one of those reasons that I told you to use Chrome, because I don't think that this will play with inside Firefox right here. But usually this would play for you. It's a 9-minute video. Well, okay, it's playing. It's just I can't hear the audio on it. Okay. One thing I want to pay attention. So this is the content. You see, this is the content of the video, and then these are attachments, right? Pay attention to this, because when you get into, in a few minutes, when we get into the practice lab, I'm going to show you where you need to use that. But you can see how this video is showing you in practice lab how you actually start a return. Okay, so you've got some real good resources there. Okay, and then I already told you about the YouTube filing status video. Okay, if I click on this link, it's going to open up practice lab right here. Whoops. I was trying to make it bigger here. Now, does anybody remember what our password was to get into it? It's Train Pro Web, all in caps. But unfortunately, that doesn't get you into it. Okay, and I have a password manager, so this is memorizing my account. But when you first go into it, you're not going to have an account. You've got to create one. So let's go show you how to create the account. Okay, so first you're going to have to put in an email address and confirm the email address. I would highly suggest you use it. You're going to have to put in email addresses for like 3 different accounts that you're going to create. I would highly suggest you use the same one. I've seen some volunteers, they created a Gmail address that they use just for VITA stuff, right? jim.simpson.vita@gmail.com or whatever. But you need to be able to learn how to use the Gmail tool. Whatever address you put in here, you're going to be at a site. You may go to show up to volunteer and you can't remember your password or whatever. They're going to send you an email. And so you need to be able to access that email on the fly when you're at a site or whatever. Some of the most frustrating things I see, even with this Link and Learn, is new volunteers forgetting their passwords. I mean, we all have 1,000, you know, but find some way and at least until you get started, write these down and have them handy so that you know where to get it. So you'll have an email address here. Usually for a username, you can usually use your email address, and that just kind of makes one less thing to remember. Then you got to create a password and reconfirm it. When it says program type, most of this is going to be VITA. You're going to select, okay? Ignore this, the site identification number. You don't know it, and you don't need to know it for this purposes yet. Then you're going to do a security question, you know, like what city were you born or whatever, answer that. And then you're going to click on create an account, okay? So I'll cancel this because I've already done it, but then it'll take you back here and you're going to sign in using that account you just used. So I'll sign in. So now I'm at the practice lab. This page has a ton of resources for you. We're going to explore a couple. That first link I took you, okay, first of all, here's getting started with it. You know, there's a user guide that you can click on to do it. These section 2 and section 3, you won't need to know. These are for administrators that are doing it. But section 4 is probably what you're going to want to pay attention to, at least to start with. And there's user guides. This is a video that we just showed you earlier. If I click on this, it would be that video of starting the return. Later on, as you go through these lessons, like you're going to start entering income. And you might want to know which screens to go enter the income. Here's some videos that can show you all of that stuff. And most of these lessons are going to link you directly to these videos, okay? But let's look over here in section 6 where it says enhancements and miscellaneous. Hey, I just noticed here's a new one, scan documents. So every time I look at this, I find something new on here. We may be starting to use scan documents for tax season this year, but let me not get off track. What I want to bring you up here for is look at these practice returns. And we still have almost 2 months before we're starting to do returns. And if you want to get comfortable and you want to get these, this is a very good way to practice. Let's open one of these up. So here it says loading media, and this is only a 10-second video. It's giving you basic, these are answer checkpoints, okay? Now, so it doesn't really tell you what to do, right? I think if the audio was playing, it would tell you to go up here on the left-hand side, click on the attachments tab, and then here you have a scenario, and then here you have a solution. So let's open up the scenario. So right here is going to give you all the information you need. You might want to print this out and put it to the side, but this is going to give you all the information you want to put into the tax return, just as if you had the quality, the intake and interview sheet in front of you. Here's some information for W-2s, you know, that you're going to input, and then it tells you where they want their refund deposited, okay? I think I got to get back in. Yeah, there it is, okay? So then you're going to use that information to go into Practice Lab, input the return, and then when you get done, you can come back here and see the second link down here. This is going to give you the solution. This is going to give you the prepared return as it is perfectly done. And you should kind of get used to this because this is exactly the output we will get when we do returns in TaxSlayer. First several pages, I use this for doing review to make sure I input stuff right. You know, I kind of double check myself. It gives you a handy little W-2 form to make sure you got everything in the right box, you know, got the right codes in there. Then these are the consents that we have to have them sign. You know, it's not. Here's the authorization to e-file the return. Now here's the actual return, okay? And so you want to make sure, hey, did I get the dependent in there right? Did I spell everything right? Here I can check myself, you know, is wages that? Remember there were some checkpoints. I think it told you what adjusted gross income was, 29,013. We'll go back and look at that in a second. But here's how you can actually check your return to this one. So this is really handy stuff. Let me go look at that again real quick. Yeah, see, here was the checkpoints, right? So you can use this to check as you're going if you're doing that. So this is extremely handy within, this is the first page of Practice Lab homepage. We haven't really got into the software yet. These are just tools to help you do things. There's some recorded webinars here, and I would note here's probably you'd want to look at this webinar, Return Preparation 1, Return Preparation 2. A lot of this other stuff is for administrators and site coordinators, but this will help you along in using TaxSlayer. So now let's go in and say, let's go into the practice area. This is your account. So like this is my account. I already started doing, and here's what I would suggest that you do, right? As you're going through these lessons, assuming you're going to take the advanced return, as you go through, get started doing the returns, because when you go through to take these tests, they're going to give you, I don't know, there's 6 or 7 scenarios, and maybe the first 4 is just you got to read something and then answer some questions about it. Well, you'll probably need to go look some things up. But then the last 2 or 3 require you to prepare a return, and then they're going to ask you, what's this number on the return? And you can't get to it unless you prepare the whole return. So I would just start off, as I have here, Harris Franklin is one of the returns in the advanced scenario. I just started inputting this return, and if you do this as you go, then when you get ready to start practice, you'll have some of the work done, and you can kind of see how to do it. So with that, that's your basic intro to the practice lab. So let's look at now, let's say you've gone through all of your lessons, you've gone through your test and retest guide, and you've taken, you've answered all the questions, and hey, you're ready to get certified. Or even maybe before that, you just want to do the volunteer standards of conduct training or something like that. Before you do that, you have to create an account in Lincoln Learn. So let's go back and do that now. And of course, menu is going to take you back there. Actually, I'm going to close this up here because here's where we're back at the beginning. This is the Lincoln Learn homepage. So what I want to do right now is I want to create an account. Okay. Now, before I start this, earlier, I told you about the Getting Started tutorial. Although I'm going to walk you through this, if you forget something, come back here and open this up. I'll say open with Adobe Acrobat. And see, this is the page we're on right now, and it walks you right through. It's going to show you here, create an account, and here's how you're going to register with Lincoln Learn and the questions you're going to have to answer. And then after you get an account set up and you're ready to take a test, you're going to log back in here, and it's going to show you here, you click on, here's the volunteer standards of conduct. It's going to show you, here's how you launch the test, right up in here. Right up in there in case you can't see it. Tells you how to start the assessment. It just walks you right through of what to do, okay? Later on, after you've taken these, we're going to have you print out, your site coordinator will have you print out the volunteer agreement, but you can save that for later. This is just in case you forget or you want a guide, you can pull this up. So right now, we're going to go create an account. I'm going to click on Create Account. And here it's going to say, here's your self-registration. Most of these things won't apply to you. Usually you're just going to want to click VITA Volunteer. Note that the items with an asterisk you have to fill out, okay? Answer these questions. Do you want to take site coordinator? No. Are you an instructor? No. Are you a spec territory manager? No. Do you plan to volunteer in the VITA program? Oh yeah, okay. So we want to click that. What's your training source? So right now we've been using Lincoln Learn. If for some reason, I think I mentioned, I'm going to conduct a 4-day training and we're going to record that and put that out. If you were to go through that training, you would then probably want to say you use the publication 4491 as your training resource, okay? Here you're going to put in your first and last name. I'm going to slow down here for a second because what's important here is, and don't take this personally, but one of the new IRS rules this year is the site coordinator is going to have to look at your photo ID, driver's license, passport, mostly your driver's license, right? But a government issued ID, whatever ID you're using, the first name and last name in all of your registrations here and with when you set up your TaxSlayer account, they've got to match your ID perfectly, okay? This one asks for SCID, just ignore it. It's no asterisk by it, you don't need it. Here you can create your username, password. This will, if I click on this link, it tells you, hey, it's got to be, the passwords are case sensitive and have to be 8 characters long. Not very complex for this day and age, I would say, but you can make it more complex if you want and do that. The email address is critical because if you ever forget the password, you're gonna have to have a valid email address to be able to get a new one sent to you. Address, city, postal code, time zone. I guess it's not required for partner organization name, but I would put it in there. If you're with City of Phoenix, put in City of Phoenix VITA. My students would put in Masters of Coin. Some of you returning volunteers, you're going to want to go update this profile in Lincoln Learn. Make sure your name is correct to your photo ID, and then select how many years you've volunteered for that. These last couple things are only applicable if you're going to get continuing education credits, and that's only if you're an enrolled agent, a CPA, a financial planner, or an attorney, right? And then you're going to have this PTIN if you are one of those for doing it. And then you just click on register, voila, you're done. And you'll go back to here, and then I'm going to go ahead and sign in here, okay? And so once you have your username and password, you can sign in. Now, I don't think you guys will see the Circular 230. Those are for professional preparers, but here are the basic exams. Here's the advanced exams, military, international. Even I have never really done the Puerto Rico one, but you may be in a site that has some of those. But if I look at advanced, you can see here I've already taken the volunteer standards of conduct and the intake interview and site coordinator. There's a score here that tells you your score, okay, and how many attempts you've done. Your site coordinator, nobody else is going to see your score. So if you take it once and you get a 75 and you got to take it again, you know, they're not going to see this. Okay, so don't worry about that. Here is where you would take the advanced exam. I'm not going to click on it yet because I'm not ready to take it. Okay, but when you do, let's see. Here, I can click on it because, yeah. So this brings you up this little box, and it showed you on that Getting Started tutorial. I've got to click on this to launch the exam, okay? And it tells you here, welcome to the test. You got to have a minimum score of 80%, 28 out of 35 questions, right? Tells you click on launch in the upper right-hand corner, okay? By the way, this won't show up until after you've taken the volunteer standards of conduct and intake interview exam. You won't be able to take the certification, the tax law exams. Okay. So, if this were a live session, I'd ask you if you had any questions. I'm going to look at my little cheat sheet, and I think I have covered everything here. One last thing I'm going to show you, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen, okay? And I would tell you, I'm going to type in my email address. I would tell you, I'll be glad to answer questions for you. If you've got specific questions about exam problems, I'm going to ask you to contact your site coordinator. But if you've got questions about this training, or feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll try to get back with you as soon as I can. It's been a pleasure. I wish I could see you, but I hope this has been a help to you. Okay, thank you very much, and this will end the session.